Many people focus on changing their circumstances, yet the same patterns keep returning. They try new plans, new goals, even new environments, but the results feel familiar. This creates confusion. You begin to wonder why effort does not always lead to different outcomes. What often goes unnoticed is that behavior follows a deeper layer. The mind reacts according to what it repeatedly feels, not simply what it decides. You may say you want confidence, stability, or peace, but if your inner state remains worry, doubt, or tension, your actions quietly reflect that state. Without realizing it, reactions, choices, and habits begin to match the emotion you carry. This audiobook explains how awareness of your inner condition gradually changes your outer direction. When feelings change, perception changes, and actions begin to move differently. Chapter 1. Why Inner States Shape Outer Results. Most people believe events determine how they feel. A situation happens, and emotion follows, yet often the reverse quietly occurs. The emotion already present inside the mind influences how the situation is interpreted. Two individuals can experience the same event and react completely differently. One sees opportunity, the other sees threat. The difference is not the event, but the inner condition. The mind does not observe reality neutrally, it filters reality through feeling. If tension exists, the world appears tense. If calm exists, the world appears manageable. This is why outer change sometimes fails to create inner peace. The external environment shifts, yet perception remains the same. Without altering the internal state, the experience repeats in new surroundings. The brain constantly searches for meaning. To interpret events quickly, it uses emotion as a guide. When a person carries worry, attention moves toward problems automatically. They notice criticism more than encouragement and difficulty more than possibility. Their reactions then shape outcomes. Because they respond defensively, others react similarly. The result appears caused by circumstances, yet it was influenced by perception first. Inner feeling guided reaction, and reaction guided experience. Inner states also influence decisions. A person feeling confident attempts new actions and tolerates uncertainty. A person feeling doubtful avoids risk and chooses safety. Over time, these small choices create different directions. Neither person consciously plans identical results. Their emotions quietly lead them there. The outer life becomes a reflection of repeated inner responses. There is a subtle feedback loop. Emotions shape behavior, and behavior shapes results. Results then reinforce the original emotion. Someone who expects rejection behaves cautiously, receives distant responses, and concludes rejection was inevitable. The cycle continues because perception initiated it. Breaking the cycle requires recognizing the starting point is internal. The mind prefers consistency. It feels comfortable when experiences match expectations. If someone expects difficulty, they unconsciously notice evidence supporting that belief. Conflicting evidence receives less attention. This selective awareness strengthens the inner state. The world appears to confirm what was felt already. A simple example appears in conversation. A tense person hears neutral comments as criticism. A relaxed person hears the same comments as information. The words did not change. The interpretation did. Interpretation then affects response, and response shapes relationship. Inner condition quietly directs outer interaction. Inner states also affect persistence. When someone feels hopeful, they continue effort despite obstacles. When they feel discouraged, they stop early. Over time, persistence produces improvement. Early stopping prevents it. The outcome looks like luck, but it began with emotional expectation. Physical posture even reflects inner state. Confidence produces open movement and steady voice. Anxiety produces hesitation and avoidance. Others respond accordingly. The interaction reinforces the original feeling. Again, the environment reacts to inner condition expressed through behavior. Attention follows emotion. The brain scans the environment for what matches its mood. Fear notices danger quickly. Calm notices opportunity. What is noticed determines what is acted upon. Action determines result. The chain begins internally, not externally. People often attempt to change results without observing reactions. They change plans repeatedly, but maintain the same emotional approach. The pattern continues because behavior originates from perception. When perception changes, even familiar situations produce new responses. Awareness interrupts this automatic process. By noticing emotion before acting, a person gains choice. They no longer react immediately according to feeling. They respond deliberately. This pause changes behavior, and behavior changes outcome. Inner stability improves judgment. Decisions made calmly consider long-term effects. Decisions made under tension seek immediate relief. The difference influences direction significantly over time. Emotional balance, therefore, becomes practical, not only psychological. There is also influence on motivation. A person who feels capable begins tasks earlier. A person who feels uncertain delays. Earlier beginnings create more opportunities for success. Delay reduces them. Again, feeling precedes outcome. Gradually, a realization appears. The world is not only experienced, it is interpreted. Interpretation determines reaction, and reaction determines experience. Changing interpretation changes experience without changing circumstances immediately. In the end, outer results follow inner states because behavior connects them. Feelings guide perception, perception guides action, and action shapes reality. When a person understands this, they stop only trying to change events. They begin observing their inner condition. From this awareness, different actions arise, and life begins moving in a new direction. Chapter 2. Thoughts follow emotional patterns. People often believe their thoughts appear logically and independently, as if the mind evaluates situations objectively before emotion enters. In reality, emotion frequently arrives first, and thought organizes itself afterward. The brain quickly senses a feeling and then produces explanations that match it. If tension exists, thoughts gather evidence supporting worry. If calm exists, thoughts organize toward solutions. This happens so quickly that it feels like thinking created the emotion, when actually the emotion guided the thinking. Understanding this reverses a common assumption. The mind is not always reasoning its way into feeling, it is often feeling its way into reasoning. A person carrying anxiety wakes and immediately notices problems to solve. Small uncertainties appear larger, and neutral situations seem threatening. The mind does not invent these concerns randomly. It selects them because they match the emotional state already present. The emotion directs attention, and attention directs thought. Another person with a relaxed inner state notices the same environment differently. They still recognize challenges, but they interpret them as manageable. Their thinking feels clearer, not because their intelligence differs, but because their emotional filter differs. Emotions act like a lens. Thoughts pass through this lens before reaching awareness. A hopeful emotional state encourages constructive thinking. The mind imagines possibilities and plans actions. A discouraged emotional state encourages restrictive thinking. The mind predicts failure and hesitates. Both individuals may face identical circumstances. Their mental narratives diverge because the feeling shaping thought is different. This explains why positive thinking alone often feels ineffective. A person repeats encouraging statements while still carrying worry. The emotional pattern contradicts the words. The brain trusts the feeling more than the phrase. Thoughts quickly return to familiar patterns because they are supported by emotion. Changing thinking requires addressing the emotional tone beneath it. Memory selection also follows emotion. When someone feels insecure, they recall past mistakes easily. When they feel confident, they recall past successes. The brain retrieves information consistent with present feeling. The past appears different depending on the current state. Thoughts about history are not fixed records, they are influenced by emotion. Another example appears in decision-making. Fearful emotions produce cautious thoughts. The mind imagines risks repeatedly. Calm emotions produce balanced thoughts. The mind evaluates options without exaggeration. The decision then follows the narrative created by those thoughts. Emotional patterns therefore guide practical outcomes. Even interpretation of feedback depends on emotional state. A tense mind hears criticism where none was intended. A stable mind hears information. The words spoken externally remain unchanged. The thoughts formed internally differ. Reaction follows interpretation. Interpretation follows feeling. Emotional patterns also influence expectations. Someone accustomed to disappointment anticipates problems before evidence appears. Their thoughts prepare defenses. Someone accustomed to progress anticipates improvement. Their thoughts prepare effort. Expectation becomes a mental habit shaped by emotion. There is a reinforcing cycle. Emotion shapes thoughts. Thoughts reinforce emotion. A worried feeling produces worried thoughts. Those thoughts strengthen the worry. The cycle continues automatically unless interrupted by awareness. Without awareness, the person believes their thinking is objective. Attention strengthens emotional thinking. The mind spends more time considering ideas consistent with feeling. Repetition deepens belief. The person concludes their thoughts are accurate because they appear frequently. In reality, frequency reflects emotional influence rather than truth. Awareness introduces choice. When a person notices their emotional state first, they understand why certain thoughts arise. They do not immediately believe every thought. They observe it. Observation weakens automatic influence. Thinking becomes clearer because it is no longer entirely reactive. Emotional regulation gradually changes thinking patterns. As the inner state stabilizes, thoughts become balanced. The mind stops exaggerating problems or dismissing possibilities. Judgment improves naturally without forcing optimism. This change also affects communication. A calm, emotional tone produces measured words. A reactive tone produces impulsive speech. Words influence relationships, and relationships influence experience. Again, inner state precedes outer outcome. Over time, the person realizes thoughts are not enemies to fight, but signals to understand. They reveal the emotional pattern beneath them. By caring for the feeling, the thinking reorganizes naturally. Effort shifts from controlling thoughts to stabilizing emotion. In the end, thoughts follow emotional patterns because the brain seeks coherence between feeling and understanding. Change begins not by forcing new ideas, but by recognizing the emotional tone guiding them. When the inner feeling becomes steady, the mind thinks differently on its own, and decisions begin reflecting clarity rather than reaction. Chapter 3. The mind searches for familiar feelings. The mind is not only a thinker, it is a pattern keeper. It constantly tries to recreate what feels familiar, even when familiar is uncomfortable. A person may consciously want change, yet unconsciously repeat emotional states they have known for years. This happens because the brain associates familiarity with safety. What is known requires less energy to process. What is unknown requires adjustment. The mind, therefore, returns to familiar emotional territory, not because it prefers pain, but because it recognizes it. This explains why people sometimes leave a difficult situation only to find themselves in a similar one later. The outer details differ, yet the emotional experience feels the same. The pattern did not follow circumstances. Circumstances followed the pattern. Familiar feelings guide attention without awareness. Someone used to worry notices uncertain details quickly. Someone used to calm notices stability quickly. The environment contains many signals, yet the mind selects those matching its inner state. It then reacts accordingly. Because reaction shapes outcome, experience becomes consistent with expectation. The person concludes life repeats itself, not realizing their perception initiated the repetition. This tendency appears strongly in relationships. A person accustomed to emotional distance may feel uncomfortable with steady kindness. Calm interactions feel unfamiliar, even suspicious. Without understanding why, they react cautiously or withdraw. Gradually, the relationship shifts toward tension, matching their familiar feeling. The pattern seems caused by others, yet it began internally. The brain learns through repetition. Emotional states experienced frequently become default settings. The mind returns to them automatically, especially during stress. Even after improvement, the person may recreate old reactions because they are practiced. This is not conscious choice. It is conditioned response shaped by memory. There is also comfort in predictability. Familiar emotions allow the mind to anticipate reactions. Unexpected calm can feel uncertain to someone used to conflict. They may unconsciously create tension to restore familiarity. The behavior seems irrational, yet it restores known emotional ground. Habits reinforce emotional familiarity. Certain thoughts, environments, and behaviors repeatedly produce the same feeling. Each repetition strengthens the association. The person begins identifying with the feeling itself. They believe, "This is just how I am," when it is actually how they have repeatedly responded. Memory strengthens this process. The brain recalls past experiences similar to present emotion. If someone feels discouraged, memories of failure surface easily. These memories confirm the feeling and deepen it. The person then acts cautiously, repeating the outcome they expected. Breaking this cycle requires awareness. When a person notices a familiar emotion arising, they can pause before reacting. The pause interrupts automatic behavior. Instead of following the old response, they choose a different one. The new response feels uncomfortable at first because it is unfamiliar, not because it is wrong. Gradually, the unfamiliar becomes familiar. Repeating calm reactions teaches the brain a new emotional pattern. What once felt unnatural becomes stable. The mind stops seeking old feelings because it learns a different baseline. This change affects perception. Situations once interpreted as threats appear manageable. The person notices opportunities previously overlooked. The environment seems different even when it is the same. The difference lies in the emotional lens. There is patience required in this process. Familiar patterns do not disappear immediately. The mind returns to them often. Each time awareness redirects response, the new pattern strengthens slightly. Progress occurs quietly through repetition. Self-compassion helps as well. Criticizing oneself for recurring emotions reinforces them. Observing them calmly weakens their influence. The person understands the reaction is learned, not permanent. Eventually, reactions become deliberate rather than automatic. The person feels less controlled by old emotional habits. They experience situations freshly instead of predictably. Life feels less repetitive because behavior changed. The realization emerges that the mind was not attracting events intentionally. It was repeating emotional patterns unconsciously. By changing the feeling, the experience changed. Outer variation followed inner adjustment. In the end, the mind searches for familiar feelings because familiarity signals safety. When awareness introduces new responses, the brain learns a new definition of safety. Through steady observation and repeated calm action, the person steps out of old emotional cycles and begins experiencing life with greater freedom and choice. Chapter 4. Fear repeats the same decisions. Fear rarely appears as panic. Most of the time it arrives quietly, disguised as caution, practicality, or timing. A person thinks they are making a careful decision, yet they are often repeating a protective reaction. Fear narrows attention. It directs the mind toward safety and away from uncertainty. Because uncertainty exists in all growth, fear naturally resists change. The individual does not notice the influence immediately. They simply feel hesitation and call it reasoning. Over time, the same choices appear again and again. The person believes circumstances limited them, but often the same emotion guided the same decision. The mind treats unfamiliar situations as potential danger, even when they are harmless. This is not weakness, it is survival instinct. However, modern challenges rarely threaten survival. They threaten comfort, identity, or approval. The brain reacts similarly anyway. It signals caution, and the person steps back. The action feels sensible, yet the opportunity disappears. Repetition forms because the feeling repeats. Each time avoidance occurs, the mind learns that retreat brings relief. Relief reinforces the behavior. Fear also influences interpretation. A new opportunity can appear exciting to one person and risky to another. The difference lies in expectation. The fearful mind predicts loss first. It imagines embarrassment, rejection, or failure. These imagined outcomes feel real enough to stop action before it begins. The person thinks they avoided danger, but they avoided possibility. There is a subtle cost to repeated avoidance. Each time someone declines action due to fear, confidence decreases slightly. They trust themselves less because they have less evidence of capability. The next decision feels heavier. The mind remembers previous hesitation and repeats it. A pattern forms quietly through memory. Fear narrows perception as well. It directs attention toward what might go wrong rather than what could go right. The person gathers reasons to delay. They call it analysis, yet the analysis only confirms hesitation. They become skilled at explaining inaction. The explanations feel logical, but they originate in emotion. Relationships show this pattern clearly. A person afraid of rejection may remain distant. Their distance creates emotional space in others. They interpret that distance as rejection, confirming their fear. The original emotion shaped the reaction, and the reaction shaped the experience. Fear often disguises itself as waiting for readiness. The individual believes they will act once they feel confident. Confidence rarely arrives before action. It follows experience. Waiting for confidence prolongs hesitation. The decision repeats because the condition never appears. There is also a protective belief. Avoiding risk prevents disappointment. While it reduces immediate discomfort, it preserves limitation. The person avoids failure, but also avoids growth. Their life remains stable yet unexpanded. Over time, they feel stuck without understanding why. Breaking this cycle begins with recognition. When someone notices fear influencing choice, they gain awareness. They see the same emotion appearing before each repeated decision. Awareness separates reaction from identity. They understand the feeling is present, but not authoritative. Small actions help weaken fear's control. Acting despite mild hesitation teaches the brain a new association. The mind learns uncertainty does not equal harm. Each safe experience reduces intensity. Gradually, courage replaces avoidance. Fear does not disappear entirely. It becomes information rather than command. The person listens but decides independently. They evaluate situations realistically instead of emotionally. Decisions improve because perception widens. There is also relief in confronting fear. Anticipation often feels worse than action. Once the person acts, the imagined consequences rarely match reality. This realization reduces future hesitation. Experience replaces speculation. Confidence grows from repetition. Each deliberate action becomes evidence. The person trusts their ability to respond to challenges. Fear loses authority because capability is proven repeatedly. Eventually, choices diversify. The individual no longer repeats the same protective decisions. They explore new options calmly. Life becomes varied because reactions changed. In the end, fear repeats decisions only when unnoticed. When observed and gently challenged, it loses influence. The person learns that safety exists not only in avoidance, but also in participation. By acting with awareness, they replace habitual hesitation with thoughtful choice and create new possibilities in their direction. Chapter 5. Awareness interrupts automatic reactions. Most reactions in daily life happen faster than conscious thought. A word is heard, a message is read, or a situation changes, and the body responds instantly. The emotion rises, the mind interprets, and behavior follows almost automatically. Later, the person wonders why they reacted that way. The answer is simple: there was no pause. Without awareness, reactions follow habit rather than intention. The brain chooses the most practiced response because it requires the least effort. Awareness introduces something new into this process. It creates a brief moment between stimulus and action. In that small moment, choice becomes possible. Automatic reactions come from memory. The brain stores previous experiences and uses them to respond quickly. If a person once felt criticized in a similar situation, they may respond defensively now, even when no criticism exists. The mind is not evaluating the present fully, it is repeating the past efficiently. Awareness brings attention to what is actually happening now. Instead of acting from memory, the person begins acting from observation. This pause feels small but changes everything. When awareness appears, emotion is noticed before it controls behavior. The individual can feel anger rising, yet not speak immediately. They can sense anxiety, yet not withdraw instantly. The emotion still exists, but it no longer commands action. This is not suppression. It is understanding. The person allows the feeling while deciding the response. Many misunderstand awareness as overthinking. Overthinking adds more thoughts to the situation. Awareness removes excess reaction. It is simple noticing. The person observes breath, body tension, or tone of voice. This observation slows the automatic cycle. The mind becomes clear enough to respond deliberately. Awareness also reduces regret. Quick reactions often lead to words or actions that feel wrong afterward. By pausing briefly, the person prevents impulsive behavior. They respond calmly and consistently with their values. Over time, relationships improve because reactions become measured. Another effect is emotional clarity. When reacting automatically, feelings blend together. Anger hides fear, and frustration hides fatigue. Awareness separates them. The person recognizes what they actually feel. Correct understanding leads to appropriate action. Habits depend on repetition. Automatic reactions are habits repeated many times. Awareness interrupts repetition. Each time a person notices the reaction and chooses differently, a new habit begins forming. Change occurs not by force, but by repeated conscious moments. Awareness also influences decision-making. Instead of reacting to immediate emotion, The individual considers long-term effects. They ask whether the response helps or harms their direction. Decisions become thoughtful rather than impulsive. There is physical benefit as well. Emotional reactions activate stress responses in the body. Frequent automatic reactions keep tension high. Awareness allows the body to relax before acting. Breathing steadies and energy becomes balanced. Another change appears in communication. A person who listens with awareness hears more than words. They notice tone and intention. Misunderstandings decrease because responses are patient. Conversations become clearer and calmer. At first, awareness requires effort. The mind forgets and reacts quickly. With practice, noticing becomes easier. The pause appears naturally. The person becomes familiar with observing emotion rather than becoming it. Gradually, emotional triggers lose strength. Situations that once caused strong reactions feel manageable. The brain learns a new pattern. Feeling does not require immediate action. Stability replaces impulsiveness. Awareness also strengthens self-control. The individual feels less controlled by circumstances. They realize their behavior comes from choice, not only from situation. This realization increases confidence. Daily life becomes slower internally, even when externally busy. The person experiences events fully, instead of reacting quickly. Calm attention replaces tension. Actions feel intentional. In the end, awareness interrupts automatic reactions by creating space. Within that space, choice appears. Repeated choices form new patterns. Through simple observation, behavior changes naturally, and life becomes guided by intention rather than habit. Chapter 6. Emotional stability improves judgment. Judgment depends less on intelligence than on emotional condition. A person may understand a situation clearly in theory, yet choose poorly when emotions rise strongly. When the mind is agitated, perception narrows. It focuses on immediate relief rather than long-term effect. Emotional stability widens perception. It allows the individual to see consequences calmly and respond thoughtfully. The difference between reaction and judgment lies in the state of the mind at the moment of decision. When calmness is present, the brain evaluates options. When agitation dominates, the brain seeks escape. Stability, therefore, becomes practical, not only psychological. Strong emotion speeds thinking but reduces accuracy. Anger urges quick action, anxiety urges quick avoidance, and excitement urges quick commitment. Speed feels decisive, yet it often overlooks important details. A calm mind moves slower, but sees more. It notices context, timing, and impact. Decisions made from steadiness often appear simple afterward because they were clear from the beginning. Clarity requires emotional quiet. Emotional stability does not remove feeling, it balances it. The person still experiences disappointment, concern, and enthusiasm. The difference is they are not overwhelmed. They can acknowledge emotion without surrendering direction. The feeling becomes information instead of command. They listen, then decide. Consider a disagreement. When emotion rises, the person interprets words personally and responds defensively. The discussion escalates. Later, they regret speaking quickly. With stability, they hear the same words differently. They respond to meaning rather than tone. The conversation resolves instead of intensifies. The situation did not change. Perception did. Financial decisions also reflect this principle. Anxiety leads to impulsive selling or unnecessary risk avoidance. Excitement leads to careless investment. Calm evaluation leads to balanced judgment. Emotional steadiness protects practical outcomes by preventing extreme reactions. Fatigue often weakens judgment because emotional control decreases. small problems feel large, and patience shortens. A stable mind recognizes this and delays important decisions until clarity returns. Waiting briefly often produces better choices than reacting immediately. Memory functions differently during emotional turbulence. The brain recalls dramatic events and ignores neutral ones. This distorts understanding. Stability allows memory to balance. The person considers both success and failure before deciding. Another effect appears in problem solving. Emotional pressure narrows thinking to one solution. Calmness allows multiple possibilities. The individual becomes creative because attention is not consumed by urgency. Better solutions appear naturally. Emotional stability also improves listening. Instead of preparing a response immediately, the person hears fully. They understand intentions behind words. This understanding prevents misinterpretation and strengthens relationships. Confidence grows from stable judgment. When decisions repeatedly produce reasonable outcomes, the person trusts their thinking. They act without hesitation because experience supports them. This confidence is quiet, not dramatic. There is also patience in stability. The individual tolerates uncertainty without rushing. They gather information before acting. Patience reduces mistakes because decisions are complete rather than hurried. Self-awareness strengthens stability. Recognizing rising emotion allows pause. The person breathes, observes, and chooses timing. The pause protects clarity. Over time, it becomes natural. Emotional stability influences leadership as well. Others trust someone who responds calmly. Guidance feels reliable. Stability inspires cooperation because reactions are predictable. Practice develops this skill. Repeatedly pausing before decisions trains the mind to remain balanced. Each calm choice reinforces the next. Stability becomes habitual. In the end, emotional stability improves judgment because it allows reality to be seen clearly. Decisions guided by calm attention align with long-term direction. Through steady awareness, choices become thoughtful, and outcomes gradually reflect clarity rather than impulse. Chapter 7. Attention directs behavior. Where attention goes, behavior follows. The mind cannot focus on everything at once, so it selects certain details and ignores others. These selections seem natural, yet they quietly shape action. If attention rests on obstacles, behavior becomes cautious. If attention rests on possibilities, behavior becomes active. The world does not change immediately, but perception directs response. A person who notices opportunity begins movement. A person who notices only difficulty delays. Attention, therefore, becomes a hidden guide, influencing choices long before decisions feel conscious. Attention is not only what you see, it is what you return to repeatedly. The thoughts you revisit during quiet moments train the mind's direction. When someone constantly reflects on problems, their reactions prepare for defense. When they reflect on solutions, their reactions prepare for effort. Repetition strengthens pathways in the brain. The mind becomes efficient at whatever it practices noticing. Behavior then becomes consistent with that practice. Morning attention often sets the tone for the day. If the first focus is urgency or worry, the body tightens and actions become hurried. Mistakes increase because perception narrows. When the first focus is steady and deliberate, actions unfold more carefully. The same schedule can produce different experiences depending on the first direction of attention. Small mental choices influence physical results. Distractions demonstrate this clearly. When attention jumps constantly, behavior loses continuity. Tasks begin but rarely finish. The individual feels busy, yet unproductive. Attention scattered produces effort scattered. By keeping attention on one activity long enough, behavior becomes sustained. Productivity grows not from working harder, but from noticing less unrelated stimulation. Attention also affects emotion. Focusing on criticism magnifies insecurity. Focusing on learning reduces it. The environment contains both, but the mind selects emphasis. The person then reacts to the emphasized element. Behavior mirrors the focus. Emotional experience follows the same direction. Habits form around repeated attention. A person who notices their posture begins adjusting it automatically. A person who notices their reactions begins moderating them. Awareness strengthens through observation. Over time, the brain anticipates change before conscious effort. Attention teaches behavior gradually. Relationships are shaped similarly. When someone listens carefully, they respond thoughtfully. When attention drifts, misunderstanding appears. The words spoken may be the same, yet the reaction differs because attention differed. Careful listening improves connection because behavior aligns with understanding. Attention influences confidence as well. Constantly noticing mistakes produces hesitation. Noticing progress encourages persistence. The person does not ignore difficulty, but balances perception. Balanced attention produces balanced action. Learning requires focused attention. Without it, information passes unnoticed. With it, understanding develops naturally. The difference is not intelligence, but concentration. The brain retains what it attends to. Knowledge becomes behavior through repetition of focus. There is also a physical component. The body responds to attention. When someone notices breathing, it slows. When they notice tension, it softens. Behavior changes without force because awareness guided adjustment. Attention shapes action directly. Multitasking weakens behavior because attention divides. Each task receives partial focus, and errors increase. By concentrating on one activity fully, performance improves. The mind operates more efficiently when directed clearly. Goals depend on attention too. A person thinking frequently about a purpose acts consistently toward it. Another thinking occasionally forgets it during daily activity. The difference lies in repeated mental direction. Behavior follows the path most noticed. Attention also determines interpretation. During difficulty, focusing on what can be learned encourages persistence. Focusing only on frustration encourages withdrawal. The same event leads to opposite reactions based on mental emphasis. Self-control strengthens through attention. Noticing impulses early allows adjustment. Without awareness, impulses guide action automatically. The pause between noticing and acting changes outcome. Over time, attention becomes habit. The person naturally notices what supports growth. This natural noticing reduces effort because behavior aligns automatically. The environment appears different because perception changed. Calm attention slows reaction speed. Slower reaction produces thoughtful response. Thoughtful response prevents unnecessary conflict. Stability emerges from careful observation. The mind eventually understands its own influence. It recognizes behavior does not arise randomly. It arises from repeated focus. By guiding attention deliberately, the person guides action steadily. In the end, attention directs behavior because it determines what the mind prepares for. What is noticed becomes acted upon. Through conscious observation and steady focus, behavior gradually aligns with intention, and life begins reflecting the direction of awareness. Attention quietly decides what feels important. Out of countless details around you, only a few enter awareness clearly. The mind highlights what it believes deserves focus, and behavior follows that highlight. If someone constantly notices what others think of them, Their behavior becomes cautious and self-protective. If they notice their own effort instead, behavior becomes active and confident. The environment has not changed, yet actions differ. This shows that behavior is guided less by circumstance and more by mental emphasis. What the mind treats as significant becomes the direction of movement. A person who pays attention to discomfort often stops early. They notice fatigue, doubt, or boredom quickly and interpret these signals as reasons to quit. Another person notices progress, even if small. They interpret effort as improvement. Both experience the same sensations, but their behavior separates because their attention separates. The mind does not always respond to reality itself. It responds to the part of reality it is watching. Attention also trains expectation. When the mind repeatedly looks for mistakes, it expects mistakes and acts nervously. Nervous behavior increases errors, confirming the expectation. When the mind looks for improvement, it expects growth and acts patiently. Patient behavior improves performance. The outer result seems to justify the belief, yet the belief guided the behavior first. This influence appears strongly during learning. A student focused only on difficulty feels overwhelmed and avoids practice. Another focused on understanding practices longer. Over time, the second improves. The difference began not in ability but in focus. The mind's direction shaped the effort invested, and effort shaped the result achieved. Attention determines emotional recovery as well. After a setback, someone focusing on failure replays the moment repeatedly. Their behavior becomes hesitant afterward. Another focusing on the lesson extracts meaning and continues. The event is the same, yet the future differs because attention chose a different point of interest. The brain strengthens whatever it attends to frequently. Repeated focus builds familiarity, and familiarity builds confidence. When someone notices calm breathing regularly, calmness becomes accessible. When they notice tension repeatedly, tension becomes automatic. Behavior aligns with the practiced state. Even motivation depends on attention. When the person frequently visualizes the purpose of their effort, actions feel meaningful. When they focus only on effort itself, actions feel heavy. Meaning energizes behavior because the mind connects present action to future value. Attention affects patience. Watching time pass slowly increases impatience. Watching the process itself reduces it. The same waiting period feels different, depending on focus. Behavior during waiting changes accordingly, either restless or steady. There is also a connection to creativity. Attention free from distraction allows deeper thought. The mind begins forming connections naturally. Solutions appear not because they were forced, but because concentration remained uninterrupted long enough. Behavior then becomes innovative instead of repetitive. In conversation, attention shows respect. When fully present, responses match the situation. When distracted, reactions misalign. Others respond to this difference immediately. Relationships strengthen or weaken based on attention alone. Attention also influences memory. The brain remembers what it observes closely. A person attentive to learning recalls knowledge easily. One attentive to worry remembers concerns vividly. Memory then shapes future choices, continuing the cycle. Physical actions improve similarly. An athlete focusing on movement quality adjusts naturally. One focused only on outcome repeats mistakes. Improvement follows observation more than effort. The body adapts to where attention rests. Daily routines reveal the same principle. Someone attentive to time uses it intentionally. Someone inattentive loses it without noticing. Hours feel shorter or longer based on awareness. Behavior around productivity reflects this difference. Attention can be trained. Each time the person returns focus to the present task, concentration strengthens. Over time, distractions lose influence. The mind learns stability through repetition. This stability changes self-image. The individual experiences themselves as deliberate rather than reactive. Confidence grows because behavior is intentional. They trust their direction because they control their focus. Gradually, attention becomes selective. The person notices what supports growth and releases what drains it. This is not avoidance but guidance. They choose where mental energy goes, and action follows naturally. The external world begins feeling different, though nothing dramatic occurred. The person reacts less impulsively and more thoughtfully. Small adjustments accumulate into visible change. In the end, attention shapes behavior continuously. What you repeatedly observe becomes what you repeatedly do. By guiding focus deliberately, the person guides action steadily, and over time their life reflects the pattern of awareness they practiced each day. Chapter 8. Calm thinking changes actions. Calm thinking begins with a simple shift in pace. Most reactions happen quickly, driven by urgency or pressure. When the mind slows slightly, it gains space to observe rather than immediately respond. In that space, the person notices details previously ignored. A situation that once seemed overwhelming becomes understandable. This clarity changes behavior. Instead of reacting impulsively, the individual chooses a deliberate step. The action may appear small, yet it alters direction because it was guided by awareness rather than emotion. A restless mind seeks immediate relief. It rushes toward the quickest solution, even if that solution creates future difficulty. Calm thinking values appropriate response over fast response. By pausing briefly, the person recognizes consequences more clearly. They may still act quickly, but the action comes from understanding instead of tension. This difference improves outcomes because decisions align with reality rather than pressure. Calmness does not remove challenges. It changes how they are approached. A difficult task feels heavier when thoughts race with worry. When thoughts settle, the same task appears manageable. The person divides it into steps and begins. Action becomes possible because perception changed. The obstacle was not only external, but mental. In conversation, calm thinking transforms communication. When emotions rise, words come out defensively. Misunderstandings grow. With steadiness, the person listens first. They respond thoughtfully instead of reacting immediately. The same discussion that once created conflict now creates understanding. Behavior improved because thinking became balanced. There is also influence on habits. Impulsive thinking leads to impulsive behavior. The person seeks comfort instantly. Calm thinking recognizes short-term relief versus long-term benefit. They choose behavior aligned with their goals. Each calm decision strengthens discipline. Calm thinking improves patience. Instead of forcing results, the individual allows progress to develop. They continue steady effort rather than switching strategies constantly. This persistence produces visible improvement because actions remain consistent. Decision-making benefits greatly. A tense mind exaggerates risk or opportunity. Calm perception evaluates both accurately. The person considers evidence rather than assumption. Choices become reliable because they are informed by clarity. Physical reactions follow mental tone. Calm thought slows breathing and relaxes muscles. The body supports sustained effort. Tension drains energy quickly. By thinking calmly, the individual preserves stamina and focus. Another effect appears in learning. Anxiety blocks understanding by narrowing attention. Calmness opens awareness to new information. The mind absorbs knowledge efficiently. Behavior adapts as comprehension increases. Calm thinking also influences creativity. When the mind is quiet, ideas connect naturally. Solutions appear unexpectedly. The person acts with insight rather than trial and error. Action becomes intelligent rather than random. Mistakes are handled differently as well. A restless mind reacts with frustration and stops. A calm mind observes the error and adjusts. Progress continues because emotion does not interrupt learning. Time perception changes too. In agitation, time feels scarce. The person rushes and overlooks details. In calmness, time feels sufficient. Actions become careful and effective. Productivity increases without extra effort. Calm thinking supports confidence. Decisions made clearly reinforce trust in judgment. The individual becomes less dependent on others' opinions because they trust their own reasoning. Relationships improve as reactions soften. Instead of escalating conflict, the person de-escalates through measured response. Cooperation becomes easier because others feel heard. Calm thought encourages consistency. The person follows routine even during difficulty. They do not abandon plans due to emotional fluctuation. Steady behavior produces steady results. Practice strengthens this ability. Each moment of noticing tension and returning to calm builds skill. Over time, calmness becomes natural rather than forced. The environment begins responding differently. People react positively to steady behavior. Opportunities appear because reliability becomes visible. The change originated from thought, yet actions expressed it. In the end, calm thinking changes actions by transforming perception first. When perception becomes clear, behavior becomes intentional. Through steady awareness and thoughtful response, the person moves from reacting to guiding their life direction deliberate. Calm thinking begins before action. When the mind is steady, it notices impulses without immediately obeying them. A sudden urge to react appears, yet the person pauses briefly and observes it. This pause is subtle but powerful. It interrupts the chain between feeling and behavior. Instead of acting automatically, the individual considers what response actually serves their intention. The situation may still require action, but the action now comes from clarity. The difference is not visible externally at first, yet internally the person experiences control. Over time, this control shapes consistent behavior. In moments of pressure, the mind tends to exaggerate urgency. Everything feels immediate and important. Calm thinking reduces this distortion. It separates what must be done now from what can wait. By recognizing priority clearly, the person acts effectively. They spend energy where it matters instead of scattering it across minor concerns. Efficiency grows because perception becomes organized. Calmness also improves persistence. When thoughts are agitated, effort feels heavier than it truly is. The person abandons tasks quickly because the mental strain seems large. With steadiness, effort appears proportional to reality. The individual continues calmly through difficulty. Persistence strengthens skill, and skill improves results. Behavior changed because perception became accurate. During setbacks, calm thinking protects direction. A reactive mind interprets mistakes as failure and stops. A steady mind interprets mistakes as feedback and adjusts. The event remains the same, yet the response creates different futures. By remaining composed, the person learns instead of retreats. Calm thinking influences memory. After a challenging experience, a restless mind replays it repeatedly, intensifying negative emotion. A calm mind observes the event once, extracts the lesson, and releases it. The person moves forward without carrying unnecessary tension. Their behavior remains focused on present effort rather than past discomfort. In planning, Calmness clarifies goals. Instead of chasing many directions at once, the individual selects one meaningful path. Attention concentrates, and actions align. Progress becomes visible because energy is not divided. Clear thinking leads to clear behavior. The body responds as well. Calm thought stabilizes breathing and posture. This physical steadiness supports longer concentration. The person works without fatigue caused by tension. Productivity increases not from pushing harder, but from reducing internal resistance. Calmness helps during uncertainty. When outcomes are unclear, reactive thinking creates worry. Calm thinking accepts uncertainty and continues action. The person focuses on what can be done now rather than predicting distant results. Movement continues because fear no longer stops it. Decision timing improves too. A tense mind decides either too quickly or too late. A calm mind senses the appropriate moment. Acting neither impulsively nor hesitantly, the person responds effectively. Timing becomes a skill guided by awareness. Calm thinking also changes interpretation of others. Instead of assuming negative intention, the person considers context. Misunderstandings decrease. Communication becomes cooperative. Relationships benefit because reactions are measured. Creativity appears in quiet attention. Without mental noise, ideas connect naturally. The person notices solutions previously overlooked. Action becomes innovative because thought became open. Self-control strengthens gradually. Each calm response reinforces the next. The brain learns a new pattern: observe first, act second. Habitual reactions weaken, and deliberate actions grow. Even daily routines feel different. Ordinary tasks are performed attentively rather than hurriedly. Quality improves. The person finishes work carefully instead of correcting mistakes later. Calm thinking also encourages reflection. At the end of the day, the person reviews actions without harsh judgment. They learn from experience. Improvement becomes continuous because awareness remains present. Confidence develops quietly. Decisions repeatedly guided by clarity produce reliable outcomes. The individual trusts their judgment. This trust reduces hesitation and strengthens commitment. External situations may still be unpredictable, yet internal steadiness remains. The person adapts calmly rather than reacting sharply. Flexibility replaces rigidity. Over time, calm thinking becomes natural. It no longer requires effort. The mind prefers steadiness because it has experienced its effectiveness. Behavior stabilizes accordingly. In the end, calm thinking transforms daily actions gradually. By observing before reacting and choosing before moving, the person aligns behavior with intention. Consistent, clear responses shape consistent results, and life direction becomes steady rather than reactive. Chapter 9. Habits reinforce inner beliefs. Beliefs often feel like thoughts we chose, yet most of them were formed through repeated experience. The mind watches behavior and draws conclusions. If a person regularly completes tasks, the mind concludes they are reliable. If they often stop early, the mind concludes effort is difficult. The belief did not appear first. The action appeared first, and belief followed. Habits therefore become powerful because they provide continuous evidence. The brain trusts evidence more than intention. What you repeatedly do becomes what you repeatedly believe about yourself. A single action rarely changes self-perception. The mind treats it as an exception. Repetition changes interpretation. When the same behavior occurs daily, the brain accepts it as identity. Someone who practices learning briefly each day begins to think of themselves as capable of understanding. This belief increases confidence, and confidence increases persistence. The habits strengthen belief, and belief strengthen behavior. Negative habits work the same way. Avoidance repeated teaches the mind that challenges should be escaped. Each postponement confirms doubt. Over time, the person believes they lack discipline, even though the belief was shaped by behavior, not by ability. Changing belief requires changing repetition. Habits reduce internal conflict. When behavior aligns with intention, the person experiences clarity. They no longer debate whether they can follow through. The brain expects consistency and relaxes. This calm becomes part of their inner narrative. They see themselves as stable because their actions are stable. Morning routines illustrate this well. Beginning the day with deliberate activity signals direction. The mind interprets the action as readiness. The person approaches the day confidently. When mornings begin with distraction, the mind interprets disorder. Confidence weakens before activity even starts. Beliefs also influence future choices. A person who believes they can improve attempts more opportunities. A person who doubts avoids them. These decisions then confirm the belief again. The cycle continues until behavior changes. Small habits matter most because they occur frequently. A brief daily effort provides many confirmations. The brain counts repetition more than intensity. Consistent small action, therefore, reshapes belief more effectively than rare large action. Habits also influence emotional expectations. A person who consistently manages difficulty calmly begins expecting calmness. They approach challenges with less fear. Their reactions improve because they anticipate stability. Learning becomes easier as belief strengthens. When the mind expects progress, attention increases. Mistakes are seen as part of development rather than proof of inability. Persistence grows because interpretation changed. There is also physical influence. The body mirrors mental belief. Confident belief encourages open posture and steady voice. Others respond positively. The response reinforces the belief again. Habit affected belief, belief affected behavior, and behavior affected environment. Breaking limiting belief requires patience. The mind resists sudden change because past evidence remains strong. New habits must accumulate before interpretation updates. Each repetition weakens the old conclusion slightly. Self-talk follows habit as well. When actions demonstrate effort, internal dialogue becomes encouraging naturally. When actions demonstrate avoidance, self-criticism appears. Words follow behavior. Consistency protects belief during difficulty. If habits remain stable, temporary setbacks do not alter identity. The person knows their pattern is reliable. They continue without losing confidence. Beliefs also influence goals. A person who trusts their persistence chooses meaningful challenges. They are not intimidated by effort because they have practiced it repeatedly. Direction expands as belief strengthens. Habitual reflection improves this process. When someone notices their consistent actions, they recognize growth. Awareness accelerates belief formation because evidence is acknowledged consciously. Over time, identity shifts quietly. The individual no longer says they are trying to change. They experience change already occurring. This certainty stabilizes motivation. The environment responds accordingly. Reliable behavior invites trust. Trust brings opportunity. Opportunity reinforces belief. The cycle becomes constructive rather than limiting. In the end, habits reinforce inner beliefs because the mind learns from repeated proof. Each action teaches the brain what to expect from you. By choosing consistent behavior, you gradually teach yourself confidence, patience, and reliability, and your outer life begins reflecting the inner belief formed through daily repetition. Habits quietly speak to the mind every day. They communicate without words, through repetition. Each time a person follows through on a small promise, the brain records evidence of reliability. The individual may not notice immediately, Yet a shift occurs in self-perception. They begin expecting themselves to act consistently. This expectation influences future behavior. Instead of debating whether to begin, they simply begin. The belief formed from habit removes hesitation. The mind does not analyze intention deeply. It watches patterns. When effort appears repeatedly, the brain interprets it as natural ability. A person who reads daily starts believing they are capable of learning. The belief encourages curiosity. Curiosity leads to more reading. What began as discipline becomes interest. The habit-shaped identity. Avoidance shapes identity as well. Repeated postponement teaches the brain that effort is unpleasant. The individual then feels resistance even before starting. They interpret the resistance as personal weakness. In truth, the brain is repeating a learned association. Changing the association requires replacing the behavior gradually. Habits also influence emotional reactions. When someone practices calm responses repeatedly, the mind expects calmness. During stress, they recover quickly because calmness feels familiar. The reaction seems natural, though it was trained through repetition. Consistency strengthens memory of success. Each completed action becomes proof stored in experience. During doubt, the person remembers previous follow-through. Confidence grows not from optimism, but from remembered evidence. Beliefs determine persistence. A person convinced they improve continues effort longer. Another convinced they cannot improve stops early. The difference began in habit. One practiced continuation, the other practiced stopping. The brain trusted the practiced pattern. Daily routines are powerful because they occur often. Small tasks completed regularly create steady reinforcement. The mind updates its conclusions quietly. Identity changes gradually rather than suddenly. Habits remove internal negotiation. The person no longer asks whether to act. Action feels expected. Energy, once spent deciding, becomes available for doing. Efficiency increases because doubt decreases. There is also influence on mood. Predictable effort reduces anxiety. The person knows what they will do each day. Structure creates stability. Stability supports emotional balance. Social perception reflects inner belief. When someone behaves consistently, others rely on them. External trust mirrors internal trust. The individual feels confident because their actions prove dependable. Changing belief requires patience. The brain remembers past behavior strongly. New patterns must repeat enough to outweigh old evidence. Each repetition strengthens the new interpretation. Habits influence self-talk subtly. After repeated effort, the person speaks to themselves with encouragement. After repeated avoidance, self-criticism appears. Language follows behavior patterns. Learning accelerates once belief aligns with action. The individual expects improvement and notices progress quickly. Attention supports growth because doubt no longer distracts. There is a cumulative effect. Many small habits combine into a clear identity. The person recognizes themselves as disciplined or inconsistent based on repeated behavior. Recognition influences choices automatically. Reflection helps reinforce belief. By noticing consistent actions, the person acknowledges change. Awareness strengthens the mental connection between effort and capability. Eventually, effort feels normal. The person no longer considers behavior difficult. It becomes part of routine. The belief in capability stabilizes because action stabilizes. External results begin aligning with internal belief. Opportunities appear manageable, challenges appear temporary. The person acts with steady confidence rather than hesitation. In the end, habits reinforce inner beliefs by providing continuous proof. The mind trusts what it observes regularly. Through consistent daily action, the individual reshapes identity, and that new identity guides future behavior with increasing ease and clarity. Chapter 10. Consistency forms a new reality. Consistency rarely feels dramatic while it is happening. Most days look ordinary, and the effort seems small, yet repetition carries quiet power. When a person repeats the same constructive action daily, the mind begins to expect progress. Expectations influence behavior. The individual approaches tasks confidently because experience suggests improvement. Reality then changes gradually because actions remain steady long enough to produce visible results. The brain learns through repetition. A single action teaches little, but many similar actions teach reliability. When behavior repeats regularly, the mind recognizes a pattern. The person stops doubting whether they will follow through. Instead of relying on motivation, they rely on habit. This reliability influences choices, making difficult tasks approachable. Consistency removes emotional dependency. A person no longer waits for inspiration. They act whether they feel energetic or tired. Because action continues, results accumulate. The individual realizes progress depends more on continuity than intensity. This understanding stabilizes effort. Small actions compound over time. Reading a few pages daily creates knowledge. Practicing a skill briefly each day builds mastery. None of these changes are obvious immediately. Months later, the difference becomes clear. The new reality appeared from steady repetition, not sudden effort. Confidence grows from predictability. When someone keeps promises to themselves repeatedly, they trust their direction. Decisions become easier because they expect follow-through. This internal trust changes how they approach challenges. They begin tasks without hesitation. Consistency also reshapes perception. The person notices improvement more readily. Because they expect growth, they recognize small progress. This awareness motivates further action. Motivation now follows effort rather than preceding it. Relationships respond to consistent behavior. Others rely on someone who acts steadily. Trust increases. Cooperation becomes natural. External opportunities often arise from perceived reliability. There is less stress in steady effort. Irregular action creates pressure to catch up. Consistent action distributes effort evenly. Work feels manageable because it is continuous rather than rushed. Identity forms gradually. A person practicing daily begins seeing themselves differently. They no longer think of change as a goal, but as a process already happening. The belief influences behavior automatically. Consistency improves skill because repetition refines technique. Each attempt corrects small mistakes. Improvement appears subtle but continuous. The individual becomes capable without dramatic transformation. There is resilience in routine. During difficult periods, established habits continue. The person maintains direction even when motivation decreases. Stability protects progress. The mind begins anticipating success. Because past effort produced results, the person expects future effort will as well. This expectation reduces fear and encourages initiative. Time becomes an ally. Instead of feeling limited by time, the person uses it intentionally. Days accumulate into meaningful change. Patience becomes practical rather than abstract. Consistency simplifies decisions. When behavior is predetermined by routine, fewer choices require energy. Mental clarity increases. Focus shifts toward execution. The external world reflects the internal pattern. Opportunities appear aligned with preparation. What once felt like luck becomes a natural consequence of readiness. Failures affect less strongly. Because effort continues, setbacks become temporary. The person views them as part of progress instead of its end. Gradually, the difference becomes undeniable. Others notice the change. The person recognizes they have become someone dependable through repetition alone. In the end, consistency forms a new reality by aligning intention with action repeatedly. Through daily, steady effort, perception, confidence, and results transform together. The life experience today becomes different from yesterday, not because of sudden change, but because continuous action quietly reshaped direction. Consistency works quietly, often without immediate recognition. A person repeats a useful action and feels little change that day. The next day feels similar. Because progress is gradual, the mind doubts its value. Yet beneath awareness, adjustment occurs. Skills refine, understanding deepens, and reactions stabilize. The absence of sudden change hides steady improvement. Weeks later, the individual handles situations with ease that once felt difficult. The difference came not from a dramatic effort, but from uninterrupted repetition. The mind trusts what it experiences regularly. When behavior stays steady, the brain stops questioning it. Action becomes normal rather than forced. This normality reduces resistance. Instead of gathering motivation each day, the person simply continues. Energy previously used for starting becomes available for refining performance. Consistency simplifies effort. There is comfort in predictability. A stable routine removes uncertainty about beginning. The person knows what comes next. This clarity calms the mind. Anxiety decreases because direction is already decided. The environment feels less overwhelming when actions are organized. Consistency influences patience. The individual no longer seeks immediate results because experience shows results accumulate. They continue without urgency. Ironically, patience accelerates progress because effort remains uninterrupted. Impatience often causes abandonment, but steady repetition prevents interruption. Each repeated action strengthens neural pathways. The brain becomes efficient at the practiced behavior. What required concentration once becomes automatic. The person notices ease where strain existed before. This efficiency encourages continuation. Consistency changes how obstacles appear. Instead of feeling like barriers, they feel like adjustments to routine. The person adapts rather than stops. Flexibility develops because continuation matters more than perfection. There is also emotional stability. Regular effort provides a sense of control. The person experiences reliability in their own behavior. This reliability reduces self-doubt. Confidence grows from evidence rather than encouragement. Time perception shifts as well. Instead of days passing unnoticed, each day contributes to a visible direction. The individual feels purposeful because actions connect across time. Continuity gives meaning to daily activity. Consistency improves focus. Repeated practice trains attention to stay longer. Distractions lose influence because concentration strengthens. Productivity increases naturally. The body adapts to steady activity. Physical and mental endurance improve. Tasks once exhausting become manageable. The person notices stamina where fatigue once appeared. Consistency also improves judgment. Familiar patterns reveal effective strategies. The person recognizes what works and repeats it intentionally. Experience guides decisions. Relationships respond positively. Others observe reliability and offer trust. Opportunities grow because dependability becomes visible. Mistakes become less discouraging. Because action continues, errors are temporary interruptions rather than final outcomes. The person corrects and proceeds. Identity gradually transforms. The individual sees themselves as persistent. This belief shapes future effort automatically. Motivation becomes less important. The person acts regardless of mood. Action produces progress, and progress reinforces commitment. Consistency also creates independence. The individual relies on routine rather than external pressure. Self-direction strengthens. Over long periods, accumulated actions produce substantial change. The transformation appears sudden to others, but felt gradual internally. Continuous effort explains the difference. In the end, steady repetition reshapes experience. Through consistent behavior, perception, confidence, and skill align. The person lives a new reality not through dramatic moments, but through quiet, daily continuity that steadily redirected their path. Consistency rarely announces itself while it is forming. The person performs the same constructive action repeatedly, and each day seems similar to the last. Because change is subtle, the mind underestimates its influence, yet repetition accumulates. Skills sharpen, reactions stabilize, and confidence grows quietly. One day the individual notices they handle situations calmly that once caused confusion. The improvement feels natural, almost accidental. In truth, steady repetition shaped perception and response. What was once effort has become normal behavior. Regular action teaches the brain reliability. The mind begins to expect continuation rather than interruption. This expectation removes hesitation before starting. The person approaches tasks with readiness instead of negotiation. Beginning becomes easier because the brain trusts follow-through. Energy once spent convincing oneself is now used performing the action itself. Consistency changes emotional experience. When behavior is predictable, the mind relaxes. There is less internal debate and fewer sudden decisions. Stability produces calm because the person understands what they will do next. Uncertainty decreases and focus improves. Emotional balance appears not from avoiding difficulty, but from repeating constructive effort. Small routines gradually influence larger outcomes. Waking at a steady time organizes the day. Completing a brief task daily increases productivity. These actions appear minor individually, yet together they shape direction. The person notices order replacing confusion. Daily life begins to feel guided instead of reactive. Repetition also strengthens attention. The brain learns where to focus and stays there longer. Distractions lose power because concentration becomes practiced. The individual works steadily without constant redirection. Tasks complete more efficiently because attention remains present. There is resilience in continued effort. When obstacles appear, the person adjusts instead of stopping. Because continuation is familiar, interruption feels unnatural. This resilience protects progress. Temporary difficulty no longer ends the process. Confidence grows from dependable action. Each completed day confirms capability. The person trusts their direction because evidence supports it. Confidence becomes quiet and stable rather than emotional and temporary. Consistency changes interpretation of setbacks. Instead of viewing mistakes as failure, the person sees them as part of routine learning. They correct and continue. This perspective prevents discouragement and preserves momentum. The body adapts alongside the mind. Regular activity builds endurance. Effort that once caused fatigue now feels manageable. Physical adaptation reinforces mental persistence. Time begins to feel cooperative. Instead of rushing to compensate for delay, the person uses time steadily. Progress appears inevitable because effort continues daily. Patience replaces urgency. Relationships respond positively. Others observe reliability and respond with trust. Dependable behavior invites cooperation and opportunity. Routine also clarifies priorities. Repeated actions reveal what truly matters. The person organizes life around meaningful effort rather than temporary distraction. Motivation becomes secondary. The individual acts regardless of mood. Because action precedes feeling, motivation often follows completion instead of preceding it. Learning deepens through repetition. Familiarity allows refinement. The person improves details gradually. Mastery develops from accumulated adjustments. Identity shifts quietly. The person begins seeing themselves as persistent and capable. This belief encourages further commitment. External change eventually appears. Achievements that seem distant become attainable. Others may view the transformation as sudden, yet it resulted from continuous practice. Consistency simplifies decision-making. Fewer choices are debated because direction is established. Mental clarity increases and stress decreases. In the end, continuous action shapes a new experience of life. Through steady effort, perception, behavior, and outcome align. The future changes not through dramatic events, but through repeated intentional choices made day after day. Change rarely begins with circumstances. It begins with observation. When you notice how your emotions influence your reactions, you gain distance from automatic patterns. Instead of forcing results, you begin guiding responses. Over time, steady awareness softens impulsive behavior and brings clarity to daily choices. You do not need to control everything around you to experience change. You only need to understand the direction of your attention and the tone of your thoughts. As your inner state becomes calmer and more stable, your actions follow the same order. The outer life gradually reflects this shift. When the mind learns to move with intention instead of reaction, progress becomes natural rather than forced.